And now what I try to do is kind of, like I mentioned, sit back and listen a little bit more to my life, because everything you're going through is teaching you something, right? You're learning, you're growing, you're adapting, evolving, like you said. And I got to be honest, the less perfect, the better. Like, perfection is, it's kind of boring. Like, what do you really learn out of that? You might get a few more likes on Instagram, and that's great. That has its place. But like, the most meaningful storytelling, or the most meaningful stories, really are the ones that have a little bit of conflict. They've got the grit, they've got the struggles, they've got the one that rises again, because that's where you yield the goodness. And so when you think about fulfillment, a lot of us want that goodness, if not for ourselves, maybe to feel like we have a purpose that we're, fulfilling.
On today's podcast episode, I have Courtney Youngs here, and I am so excited for our conversation. Courtney is a wife, mom, corporate communicator, and storyteller. She's also the author of The Waggle Dance, which is a book we're going to hear all about in our conversation. But Courtney, thank you so much for your time today. I am so excited to have you here today, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of course. It's been so good to kind of quickly connect before we hit record. And I wanted to just start with you sharing more about this concept of being a recovering perfectionist. So one of the things that we've kind of chatted about a little bit here is just this imperfection that we have to kind of embrace in our lives as moms, as women, as working people. And I would love for you to kind of dive into, what does that look like for you, and what has your path been in regards to the recovering perfectionist narrative?
Yeah, it's definitely present tense, like every single day, present tense. But just to kind of back it up, it wasn't that long ago, but in some ways it feels like forever ago, that I was this young woman, fresh out of high school, entering college, and boy, did I have a perfect plan for my life. And, I am type A. So not only did I have the plan, but I had the spreadsheet color coordinated, listed in numerical order. I knew what I wanted, how I was going to go get it done. And I wasn't going to let anything or anyone kind of pull me back away from those dreams. And I'm talking everything personally, from getting married and having a family to my career. And I worked really hard to perfect that, right? Like, I did everything by the books. I found somebody in my life who met every box and checked every box on paper my family and friends loved, is a great human being, got married. I went and worked straight out of college at a big automotive corporation and climbed as hard and fast as I could and worked even harder. And then one day I decided that my perfect plan wasn't perfect for me. And there was a lot that came into that realization. But to give you the cliff notes, I unfortunately went through a divorce. I changed careers. I stayed within the company, but took a risk and tried something new. And here I was all of a sudden kind of in this identity crisis. Like, I was known for my perfection and my planning and my, picturesque life that I was trying to project onto everyone, including myself. And one day, I kind of effectively woke up and said, but wait a minute, it doesn't feel perfect to me. And I'm a public relations specialist by trade. So I'm really good at crafting narratives, and I'm really good at making things look really good. So it was really hard to be like, you know what, it might look good, but it doesn't feel good. And I was in my mid to late 20s at that point, and I kind of pumped the brakes and started to make decisions based on fulfillment and authenticity rather than image and perfection. And it's hard. It was really hard, and really the hardest moments of my life thus far, for sure. But what it taught me was kind of this shift. And now, again, it's an everyday battle for me. I'm really trying to be a mom who doesn't chase perfection, be a corporate career woman who doesn't value her worth on perfection, be a friend, be a wife, all those things based on what is real and what is true, not what is projected perfectionism, really.
That's so good. And one of the things you said in there that I love was you started to try and make decisions based on fulfillment rather than based on like the projection of what you were portraying in some way. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what was the process of really going from, I'm going down this path and I'm making these decisions based on what I feel like my life should look like or needs to look like, versus now I'm moving into fulfillment. Now I'm moving into, I'm doing this because this is what feels really good. What did you do in order to make that switch?
I started listening to my life a little bit. I started thinking about, what does this relationship, this opportunity really feel like at the end of the day? Is this it? Is this making me the best version of myself and feeling the best version of myself? Or am I kind of telling myself a different story? And I really had to sit with those questions and answer them honestly to myself first. And it's not something you ask once and answer once and walk away from, like, especially when thinking about marriages or careers, those are big, big decisions. And so I just really went on a lot of walks, not ironically, but in hindsight, maybe a little, it was right around COVID. So a lot of us were spending a lot of time in our own heads with our own thoughts by ourselves. And that was true for me too. And so I truly would go on long walks every day and just be like, okay, Courtney, like, is this it? Like, is this truly what you have projected? Are you happy? Is this a season or is this something we need to be a little bit more real about? And it was the latter.
Yeah, it's so good. In that process, did you feel like there were moments where it was hard to portray that to others in your life, like to get support, to get encouragement? Like, speak a little bit about not only what you were wrestling with in your own heart as far as moving more into fulfilling decision making, but like, what did it look like for the people around you, for the family and friends around you? Like, what did that piece look like?
Tough. That was tough. The thing that just keeps coming to my mind and heart is I'll go on my marriage, right? I swore up one side and down the other that I would never be the person who got divorced. Unfortunately, my mom had been married and divorced a few times, and I saw the impact it had on her, on me as a kid. And I thought, if there's one thing in this world I'm not going to be, it's not going to be divorced. So I went out and found the perfect person, right? And the one that should have worked, and by many measurements, but wasn't. And I dropped a shock, on a lot of people who were really close to us, my family included. And what that looked like varied, right? There were some members of my inner circle that weren't surprised because they might have known me better than I knew myself. And then there were other members of my family, like my dad and brother, who were shocked, and not in a good way. And it was hard for a long time. And, I think some of us have people in our lives that we just truly kind of wake up every day and we want their approval and we want them to think the world of us because we think the world of them. For me, that was my dad and my brother. It is my dad and my brother. And so to kind of go against them in such a big decision and hear feedback that was really hard, but be like, okay, I hear you, but you got to hear me too. Like, this isn't where my heart is. That was a whole nother muscle that I, quite frankly, hadn't developed yet and needed to.
That is so good, and something that I think will resonate with so many, because our decision making often can be driven by what is somebody else going to interpret through this, or
100%.
how can I make sure that I'm staying in this positive light with people that I'm trying to be respected by or impress in some way. And I know that's a very real feeling for all of us.
Yeah.
And to navigate that and to be where you are now, I would love to hear kind of what common ground did you finally come to in those dynamics with your brother and your dad, and talk a little bit about how you worked through that mentally and emotionally to really help them understand your perspective and really truly where your heart is or heart was.
Well, to keep picking on the marriage category, not only did I shock them with my decision to end this seemingly perfect marriage, but then I quickly followed it with, by the way, please meet my boyfriend who's 18 years older than me.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine the feelings that were happening with my dad and brother. And, the way we worked through it was I had to dig deep for confidence. Like, I had to figure out, I'm not a great compartmentalizer by any stretch, right? I have a little spaghetti brain, all my thoughts and feelings run together. So I really had to work hard at, one, taking time to actually investigate a relationship that truly felt amazing and new and real and authentic to me, while kind of like putting my armor on and not letting all of those opinions kind of infiltrate. But then two, just kind of giving my brother and dad space to do the same. Like, they had to process and work through and see me, their concerns and their skepticism are from a beautiful place. They love me and they are my protectors and always will be. So they kind of had to work through, they had to get to know my now husband, Michael. And we just took our time with it. But, again, it just comes from or came from a place of being willing to kind of stand on my own 2 feet a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful for so many women to hear, because we don't always give ourselves permission to stand on our own 2 feet and to really say, like, this is who I am. This is what feels good. This is what I want. And I'm not going to over explain why that is.
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, like, you deserve to be standing and grounded on your own 2 feet and to really feel like you are aligned and fulfilled in where you're going. And
Yeah.
so I love that you're just speaking to this story of a lot of unpredictability, Courtney, a lot of imperfection, a
Yeah.
lot of, hi, this is really how life goes.
Yeah.
And the more we can normalize how maybe what we once envisioned as not being our reality is really a part of the story. That's a part
Yeah.
of the entire process of life, of growth, of evolution. And I love that you're really storytelling and communicating through this. So that's one of the things I know you kind of coin yourself as, Courtney, a storyteller, a communicator, someone who really embraces her own unique story. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, if someone's struggling with this concept of making fulfilling decisions or really standing on their own 2 feet and getting into this place of fulfilled forward motion, what would you say based on your own experience as far as best advice for them to move forward?
Yeah, you got to kind of flip the script on how you're looking at things, right? For instance, before all of this happened in my life, I went into it with this like perfectionist lens. Like, how can I be the best, have the best, look the best, yada, yada. And now what I try to do is kind of, like I mentioned, sit back and listen a little bit more to my life, because everything you're going through is teaching you something, right? You're learning, you're growing, you're adapting, evolving, like you said. And I got to be honest, the less perfect, the better. Like, perfection is, it's kind of boring. Like, what do you really learn out of that? You might get a few more likes on Instagram, and that's great. That has its place. But like, the most meaningful storytelling, or the most meaningful stories, really are the ones that have a little bit of conflict. They've got the grit, they've got the struggles, they've got the one that rises again, because that's where you yield the goodness. And so when you think about fulfillment, a lot of us want that goodness, if not for ourselves, maybe to feel like we have a purpose that we're, fulfilling. And that was really it. Like, I just kind of started thinking like, no, all right, pretty clear my life is not picture perfect on some measurements, but like, look at all of the lessons and experiences and stories I'm gaining. And I wonder how I can use those to help other people. For me, that's where authenticity and fulfillment went off the charts. And it was amazing, when I went through, whether it was the personal thing or some of the career journey I've gone through, how many people have reached out to me being like, all right, so like, how did you do that? How was that for you? Because I'm kind of in a similar spot now. And I just really think that all of us have a unique opportunity to do that. Should we kind of embrace those less than perfect, quote unquote,
Moments and lessons. I
Yeah.
love that you just spoke to more of like, who are you becoming in the process, and what are the lessons you can take forward in order to really not only help yourself grow, but help other people grow. And that's really some of the most powerful work we can do in this life. And I
We should
love that
be.
you're, yeah,
That's what
we
we're
should.
here for, right?
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
We're put on this earth to be a light for other people. I depend on it, right? Like, anytime I'm going through something, I'm quickly thinking like, has somebody else gone through this? Can I reach out to them? Like, help me, And then if I see someone going through something that I've gone through, and it doesn't have to be big and traumatic or deep and dark, right? Anything. It's about turning around and, hey, I've been there too, kind of thing.
Yes. And it makes everything feel a little bit less overwhelming.
Yeah.
And having that lens that you're looking through that makes life feel a little more relatable. When you talk about the grit, you talk about the adversity, you talk about how there's really a lot of boringness in this idea of perfection. That's so true. And one of the most profound gifts we can give to other people is really being honest about our own experience and how we dreamed up that this is how our life was going to go, and that's not at all how it went. And here I am. I'm still standing.
Thank God, by the way. Yeah. No, it totally, yes.
Still standing, still moving forward. And so, Courtney, I would love for you to maybe speak a little bit to the person that feels like, I know that I want to continue to embrace this idea of imperfection and my life really not being how it's been, but I'm struggling with it because it feels unknown, it feels uncertain. I feel lost in my purpose, and I don't know how to get grounded in that. Like, I don't know how to recalibrate in order to help myself continue to put one foot in front of the other. How would you kind of encourage that person? What would you tell them would be maybe most helpful for helping them feel a little bit more grounded in the direction and the path that's laid out in front of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one I have to I talk to myself daily about because not one of us really like that moment of figuring it out, right? There's that moment of tension where you don't have the clarity, you don't have the hindsight, and you're frustrated, you're worried, you're whatever it is. And it's really hard to trust an outcome that you can't see.
Yeah.
But I think that if you sat back and you honestly took a look at your life and thought about things that you have gone through, you could pretty quickly piece together a puzzle. Hey, this is something I went through in life. This is what I learned from it. And this is what I would tell somebody going through something similar today. Like, that is an amazing gift that you are giving yourself each and every time. And I am really, really sure that you could probably apply that to most significant moments or even people in your life. And so if you know that to be true, that formula is pretty tried and true, you can kind of pick it up and put it on anything you're going through. For instance, we were talking, I am newly back to work, like literally 72 hours back to work after having my second baby. And I am struggling. Like, this is hard. And it is new and I don't have my routine. Remember the type A, I'm a little bit panicked on that. It's really hard. And I don't feel great about really any kind of corner of it right now. But I have an undeniable confidence that I'm going to be on the other side of this. And someday I'm going to pick up the phone and someone's going to be like, Courtney, I'm back to work after having a baby. What do I do? And I'm going to be able to tell them because that's just how life works. So that's what I would tell somebody. You got to trust, you got to hang in, and you got to take a deep breath, open your hands a little bit and let go.
Yeah, trust is a huge one. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest lessons I've personally learned, especially inside motherhood, because there's so much out of our control. And I know for me, I had this picture perfect family, motherhood journey, parenting journey pictured and painted for my life. Mm-hmm. And I can confidently tell you 13 and a half years in, like, pretty much nothing has gone the way I thought it would. Right?
I'm only 2.5 years in and I'm already like, oh, okay.
Yeah. The amount of like trust and faith and this concept of letting go that you have to embrace inside of this life is really one of the best things we can do, not only for our mental and emotional wellness, but just our overall well-being.
Yeah.
I think for us as women, like, we can get really wrapped up in this concept of feeling like I need to be like this person, or I need to be perfect in this area of my life. And that really doesn't serve us on a very deep level. And so I just appreciate you talking about this, Courtney, because it's really, really, really powerful.
I love hearing you say that too, because while I feel like we're in this era of like, there is no shortage of information out there, right? Like, and while that is amazing on many levels, it's helped me. It also is a detriment. Like, I am constantly, my feeds are flooded with ways to do it better, perfectly, like no screen time after 2. I don't know, color inside the lines, only feed them green vegetables. I've lost track, right? Like, and so you are constantly exposed to what you think life should be or what you think you should be like. But what a beautiful position it would be to just kind of sit in the life you are and like do what you need to do to be the best you can be. And that looks different for everybody.
Yes, it does look different for everybody. And that's something that women need to normalize and talk about as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because we can so quickly get into our heads about the ways we're falling short, or the ways that the imperfect, messy chaos that we all inevitably live every day isn't reality, when it absolutely is. But we have seen so often that that's not necessarily the narrative that's shared all the time. And so I really appreciate the work you're doing, Courtney, with just talking about we're embracing imperfection. The less perfect, the better. Like, let's normalize how my life or our lives are not at all how we envision them. And that's okay. So
Yeah.
I would love for you to talk about your book, The Waggle Dance. I am fascinated by the title, and I want to know more about like how did you come up with this concept? How did you dive into this book on your heart, and just talk about that process?
Yeah, so I will start by the title because it's my favorite thing. So I mentioned the divorce and kind of the pivotal moment in and around COVID. And, it wasn't uncommon for people to be like, you should really write a book about this someday. And I'd be like, yeah, no, that's a hard pass for me. Not something I want to put in writing on that level. But what I did feel a calling on my heart was, up until that point, people and experiences had poured into me. Things people had said to me, things that experiences have taught me. I was quickly, as I mentioned, listening to life, thinking like, wow, this is amazing. Like if I could only package this and like pay it forward, right? Like give it to other people so that if they find themselves here, maybe it would help them too. And so I was chatting with a friend about that. I was like, I don't know, if I ever wrote a book, it would be something like that. And she's like, well, Courtney, that sounds a lot like a waggle dance. And I said, what in the world is a waggle dance? Like, I don't dance. I have no rhythm. Like, please, like, I can do the lawnmower. That's it. And she laughed and she's like, no, 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 no. The waggle dance is what bees do to help each other survive. Bees will go out, they'll look for things like food, water, shelter. They'll come back. They literally do like a figure eight dance to tell their friends all about it. And she's like, it's just information passing. And she's like, that's what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And like good news, I don't think bees are trying to be perfect at all. Like I don't know how many bees you've talked to, but like perfectionism, not on the radar. So I really just started thinking about, again, the experiences in the people in my life and what they had taught me and what I would pass along to someone else. And I loosely just started writing it down. And to be honest, nothing felt like the click happening there. And fast forward a handful of years, I was holding my son in the hospital. And, you're a mom, so you can relate to the moment where you're just staring at this beautiful little body in your arms and going, oh, this is why. Like, this all makes sense. All of it led me here. And so we brought our son home, and it was maybe a couple weeks later, and I went to bed and I just had this overwhelming sense of gratitude. Like, for me, God, thank you. Like, thank you for bringing me through it all so that I could be here. Now I got to know, like, how do I pay it forward? And it was like a light bulb went off. It was like, Courtney, you gotta go write that book, girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so while he napped for the first 6 months of his life and I wasn't, at work, I would just sit in front of my computer and I just wrote a love letter to him about all of the things in my life. And I would close my eyes and think, if God forbid I'm not around to tell him someday, like what would I want him to know?
Yeah.
And so every chapter is kind of set up that way, like a person or an experience in my life, what that taught me, and then ultimately what I would want my children to know about that. And for me, when I gave myself permission to have that lens, like bring it on, life, like less perfect, the better, because I'm going to position these two children at the very least the best way I can, the way only a mom can.
It's so good. And yes, I can very much relate to the second you're holding your baby in front of you, like the whole world changes. Like your whole perspective changes every single time.
Instantly.
Instantly. And it is the most wild experience that's really hard to put into words. And I love that you really took a pause and a moment to ask God, like, how can I pay this forward? Like, what are the next steps for me? And how can I make sure that I'm, setting my children up for success, but also helping others?
Yeah.
It's such an incredible personality trait. And you should be so proud of yourself for taking that step and doing that work. And I think one of the things I'd love to touch on quickly is like the imperfect journey of writing a book. I mean, being an author and writing a book, I mean, that is on my radar for one day. But I would love for you to speak to that, especially as a new mom, sitting down writing at nap time, going after a dream or a purpose put on your heart. Speak a little bit about that journey and really what that felt like for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you should write the book. You should always, and if it's not a book, just write it down. Someone once told me that, like, if you want someone to know you mean it, write it. And I have carried that with me. And, my grandmother was like my best friend in the entire world. And she passed right before the divorce, just pile it all on. And someone gifted me her journals right after she passed. And I had no idea she journaled. And I got to read them and I felt like I got to meet her all over again. And that was never lost on me. So when you ask about the journey of writing a book, like it started there. It started with this notion of like, again, if I'm not here, I want my kids to know me, now and forever kind of a vibe. And then when I decided, okay, I'm going to write it, I really truly thought in the back of my brain, like maybe it'll just be a Word document I print off and put in a third ring binder. I don't know. And I just talk about imperfection, right? I'm a communicator by trade. And so I can assure you draft one is nothing I would turn into my boss, but I just promised myself I would sit and write and I wouldn't try and filter it. I would just write as if truly my son at the time and I were driving in the car. And you just got to get it out. And you got to, the formal process of writing a book, there's people way smarter and way more experienced than me who could walk anybody who wants to do it through it. For me, it truly just started as like a big journal entry. And then as kind of one door opened and the other followed, then we had to kind of go back and make it into something that could be for anyone, I hope, but definitely for the one who needs it at least.
Yeah, that is so commendable. Like writing a book is a full-time job, pretty much from what I heard. And, when we're, again, kind of thinking about not expecting my life to go a certain way or really embracing this idea of imperfection, like you are hitting the nail on the head with this concept of learning to just roll with how your life is unfolding. And that's not always easy to do. Like there's a lot of mental and emotional components to that. There's a lot that feels so scary and uncertain and feelings of like, I'm not equipped to do this. And I don't know exactly what this is going to look like. Yeah. And when you learn to just master the art of imperfection and let go of this concept of I had it all dreamed up perfectly and that's not how it is, you're able to give yourself space to do things like writing a book, to do things like giving back.
Yeah. And writing the book is one thing, but then marketing it and talking about it is like a whole nother beast. And to give you like a very real snapshot of when I say like active recovering perfectionist, like I had big dreams. Like, Robin Roberts was supposed to call me and interview me on Good Morning America about my book. Like Girlfriend still is not called. I'm still, not giving up hope, but she hasn't. Right. And because I had all these big grand plans of what I could do and what it would look like. And for a million reasons, another pregnancy, not the least of which, it didn't look like that. The book launch didn't look like that. But it was still an amazing journey. It's still something that I can look at on my desk or hand off to somebody who I think maybe hopefully could benefit from it. We just get so caught up in the outcomes and the perfection of the outcome that we so easily jump over the journey. And I am the guiltiest of that. So I would just encourage, if it's a book or whatever you are working on or thinking about, like outcomes, great. We all need them. But that moment of journey, the tension, the less perfect, the better, like I said, that's where the magic in this life is.
That is where the magic in this life is. And I love that you spoke on that, because I think for us as women specifically, we are way too hard on ourselves. Like we are always picking apart the ways that we are not measuring up to either the vision we have in our head or the vision that was created by something else outside of us. Totally. And it's so imperative to really get grounded in the journey. And this is something that I speak about often in my practice as a health coach. But this is adaptable to everything, every facet of life. Writing a book, being a mom, working in your job, working on your health journey. Like if you are not embracing the person you are becoming and the journey itself, then you're really, truly missing it. Like you're missing the lessons, you're missing the gifts, you're missing the whole process.
Yeah.
And I know you and I connected inside of our business mentorship that we've been a part of. And one of the things that one of our mentors talks about all the time is, if you're not feeling satisfied, fulfilled, like grounded where you are along the way to where you're going, once you get there, it's not going to be fulfilling in the way you're imagining. It's going to hit that mark of imperfection and falling short, so to speak, like we have experienced in other aspects of our life. And I'm totally guilty of this too. And I really believe a lot of women are, because I speak to women all the time who are in these mindset soundtracks of beating themselves up and not embracing who we're becoming and what we're learning and how we're growing along the way. And so I love that you spoke to that, Courtney. Thank you for your perspective
Yeah.
there, my friend.
Well, right back at you. Thank you.
Of course. Really quickly, before we kind of move into wrap up, one of the things I like to ask on the podcast is kind of this concept around health and wellness, mental health. You know, you're a mom, a busy woman, you're a wife, you have a lot you're managing in your job and in your home and so much more. And I like women to really speak to this idea of the importance of sharing our stories, but also like things that help us stay grounded in reminding us to take care of our wellness. So first, I'd love for you to share why you feel like it's important for us to really speak our truth as women. And then second, I'd love to hear if you have like a favorite quote or mantra or scripture or something like that that helps you remember that you need to be taking care of yourself too, amongst everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say truly the mantra, and then let's go back to the first question, but you said the mantra and like my heart lit up. So now I'm all about it. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
It's like squirrel. My grandmother, who I mentioned, best friend in the entire world, passed away in 2019. I remember I couldn't have been older than middle school, right? And I was probably going through something really traumatic, like my first breakup or not getting the pair of jeans I wanted from Limited Too. I don't know. And she looked at me and said, Courtney, this too shall pass. And I thought, okay, makes sense. Like hard stuff passes, right? And then again, becoming a mom, I can remember one morning I was holding my son and I was nursing him. It was probably 5:30 in the morning. I had a list a mile long of things I quote unquote needed to get done for the day. And all I could hear was, this too shall pass. And I thought to myself, she wasn't really just talking about the hard stuff, was she? Like she was talking about all of these little moments, these good ones, these cup filling ones. And I hear those words so much when you talk about like personal wellness and kind of that taking care of ourselves. I think about how often and how guilty I am of rushing past those things, rushing past getting something done, or rushing past just sitting with whatever it is, my children, or, you know, a good workout. I don't know, like, and just kind of taking the moments and soaking them for all their worth. For me, that's when I feel most grounded. That's when I feel most fulfilled. And that's when I feel most at peace. So I literally am telling myself all day, every day, this too shall pass. So
Yeah,
that's
so good.
I'm
So
sorry, we can totally go back to question one.
yeah, no, if you want, if I mean, either way, like that was so good, and it's
Thank
just a
you.
good reminder. Like we rush through life so often. We rush through life so often, and I think women need to hear the truth behind our experiences and how we maybe rush through life, or how we maybe tell ourselves narratives, or how we dreamed up our life to be perfect and it isn't perfect. And that's one of the reasons I love having interviews and I love speaking to amazing women like you here on the podcast, because I want other women inside of all kinds of communities to hear our experiences, to hear our authentic truth, and to really know that they are not the only ones in their life that have maybe felt some sort of way
You
about
definitely
different things.
aren't, right? Like it's not a maybe, you aren't. And thank you. That's why, right? Like because the magic of like you too moment, or hey, I've been there too. That moment when you look across this table and you see your experience in someone else's eyes, like there is such peace and just community in that, and we are all better for it. So Erin, thank you for creating a space where it happens, because that takes a whole nother level of bravery. And I think to your point, we would all be so much better for it if these are the types of conversations we had.
Yeah, totally, Courtney. Totally. So grateful for you. Really quickly, can you share how people can find you, connect with you, get your book, all the amazing things? Would love to make sure you share that today.
Yeah, so I'm definitely an Instagram person, so you can find me at the _Waggle Dance on Instagram. Would love to chat and connect. The book is available everywhere books are sold, so Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target. But just really appreciate it. And if you do read it and you want to chat about it, or if it connects with you, there's nothing that fills my heart faster than knowing that. So please do reach out.
I love it, Courtney. Thank you so much for your amazing perspective and time today. I'm so grateful for you. And everyone, we will have everything listed in the show notes as far as how to find Courtney's book, how to find her online, and how to connect further. Courtney, thanks again for your time today, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.